All right, we now have the L8T 66 in the truck and I believe fully installed. Can't really tell a difference between a factory 5362 or L83, L86 engine. If you watch my previous videos, you'll see how I installed the L83 accessory drive and the L83 vacuum or PCV system onto this L8T to make it work. I believe some other people have done the swap and they've used the L86 or the L8T accessory drive, which has like a more traditional water pump in the front, and not the the L83 style water pump, which is this cartridge water pump over here. But yeah, everything's in. So a quick recap: air intake system is all factory. The only thing is if your truck originally came with a 5.3, you'll need this part here, which is specific to a 6.2 liter. The housing and stuff is the same, but the opening here is larger for the larger 6.2 liter throttle body. Because the L8T does come with the exact same intake manifold as the L86 or the 6.2 liter. And the biggest telltale is getting the shadow here. This PCV hose, which comes up from the VLOM or the valley cover up into here, where the L83 kind of comes around and wraps in the side of the intake and in. Use the factory exhaust manifolds. I do have all the factory PCV hoses, so like this is a fresh air inlet into this valve cover. This is the actual factory L8T valve cover. It's the exact same as the L83, L86, but the driver's side is L86 or L83, L86 specific. The valve cover that comes on the L8T, this port right here is a little bit smaller in diameter, and on a factory L8T, the PCV system works as I believe the fresh air inlet's over here, and it goes across the engine up this valve cover, the driver's side valve cover, and then actually goes into this port right here. There is no PCV valve or anything on a factory L8T. So with the L83, L86, you actually have fresh air coming in on both sides. Fresh air goes down, across, down and across, and it collects on the VLOM. There's actually like a baffled manifold on the bottom of the VLOM, and then it comes up through the PCV valve and into here, and this is where the crankcase gases get consumed right here. There's actually like a PCV valve that actually threads into the VLOM. Now I put a VLOM from an L83, L86 on this engine. There are really only two valley covers that I have found that would work in this application. One is using a factory VLOM, which you think, why would you put a DoD part on an engine that's non-DoD? Well, first of all, it gives a place for the electrical connector to land, even though it's not doing anything. You don't have to worry about wrapping a bag around it. One of those wires is hot all the time, and then there's 5 wires, one hot and then 4 grounds for the 4 solenoids that go back to the ECM. And it doesn't directly fit onto the iron block. Like I basically gutted the VLOM and left just the connector part that goes through the the cast piece of it. Okay, so then the other, you can't use, if you want to use a factory L8T manifold, it doesn't have this port here, or sorry, factory L8T valley cover, it doesn't have this port here. There's nothing on the front of it. There's just basically, I don't know if we can see it or not. Get some shadows. But So the factory L8T valley cover, just a basic blank valley cover. The only thing it has is the boss with a high pressure fuel pump in the back, and then the oil pressure like tower on the front for the oil pressure sensor. So if you run that valley cover, you need to figure out, you know, your PCV system, or you could run it like a, you know, an L8T where you have the fresh air over here and then dirty out and over the top. Now there is some talk of, you know, if you read through some forums and with the 3/4 ton guys, there's oil consumption issues with this engine in the 3/4 tons, and my guess is it has to do with the PCV system, valve design, where it's, you know, coming across and it's picking up oil vapors and then consuming it, whereas the L83, L86 PCV system has 2 fresh air intakes and it has that large baffle with like a drain. It almost works like a catch can on the bottom of the VLOM to pick up the or to allow the oil to separate from the air before it gets pulled up into here and consumed. The other valley cover that you can use is the TSP, or the Texas Speed valley cover, and it's an aftermarket part. It has the port in the front here. It doesn't come with a valve, but you'll need to put a valve in it, and it does have the oil pressure tower over here. And it would work perfectly fine, you know, to provide this PCV port and the oil pressure port. The only thing I didn't really like about it is the pad where the high pressure fuel pump mounts. It's considerably thinner than any of the factory covers. So, which would lead to more preload on your high pressure fuel pump. And I don't think that would cause a problem. I just didn't want to risk it as far as, you know, operating the high pressure fuel pump outside of its range. I'm sure if they've had problems, they would know about it, but, you know, I called Texas Speed and, you know, they kind of they weren't very helpful at all as far as, you know, asking why is the pad for the high pressure fuel pump like 30 thousandths thinner than any factory option. And then the other issue I had with the TSP cover was there's no baffling underneath. It looks like they copied the GM model in a way, because if you look on the bottom of a TSP cover, there's like a threaded port that feeds this here, but it's just completely open underneath. And which may be fine, but I just was like, well, I'm just going to modify the factory VLOM. It'll be fine. Throw it on there and not use the TSP cover at all. So, but if you did use the TSP cover, it would probably work, but I don't know. I wanted to keep all the factory style PCV baffles and everything, and then, you know, with the high pressure fuel pump pad, I wanted to keep that all within, you know, factory spec. So that was my decision. I'm sure the TSP cover will work fine, but that's where I went with it. So the only other thing is now that we don't have vacuum pump down there, no vacuum pump, we have to find a vacuum source for our brake booster over here. So I own a CNC machine shop. We do some aftermarket automotive stuff, but we made a cool little manifold. You can barely even see it, but it plugs in underneath the. Let's try to get some light in there. There we go. So it plugs, like, it sandwiches in between the evap valve and the manifold, and it has a check valve in it and everything, but it provides a nice vacuum port right off the intake manifold for the brakes. So we just take the factory brake line and take off the vacuum hose, and then there's a new piece of 1/2-inch vacuum hose here. We'll heat it up and use the factory connectors, but yeah, there it is there. Right into the factory, I guess this is the brake pressure sensor over here. So that's really the only kind of telltale sign, and you look under the hood, that it's not a L83, L86. Everything else, I mean, plugs right in. The harness plugged right into everything. You know, I bought a new harness for this swap just because the original harness was so brittle, and it was a mess probably trying to even get it off the engine, so I just bought a whole new harness. This is a 2018 with an L90, or sorry, a 8L90. So it has the TCM over there. You can see the routing of the harness everywhere. The only thing really left to do under the hood is, I noticed these push-to-connect heater hose fittings were leaking and dripping on the valve cover over here, so I found these Dorman connectors here. I gotta get those swapped on. But yeah, I guess you just cut off the factory connector and put this on, and yeah, so yeah, so I still got to get the transmission done and back in the truck. This is 1234YF. So I got to recharge the refrigerant. I already pulled a vacuum on it. I still have the connections on here, but I got it down to like 700 microns, so I know the system's sealed up. If I can pull that good of a vacuum on it, I'll let it sit on a vacuum and boil out any additional moisture that may be in the system before I put a charge back in when I get it fired up. So yeah, everything. Got some light here. Another little telltale sign is 5W30 versus the 0W20. That comes on the L8T. Yeah, there it is, all done. If you have any questions about the swap, oh, one little last thing. Yeah, it's a nice little touch. So maybe that'll get the diesel guys all riled up. Yeah, we'll get this going, and I plan on, we got a 31-foot RV. It's like about the biggest thing you can safely tow with a half-ton that I'll be pulling around. The 5.3 struggled with that guy, but it did the job, so I'm hoping this really boosts the grunt of pulling that thing around. So, and then maybe in the future, who knows what else we'll do. Maybe this will turn into a 2650. So, but yeah, any questions, hit me up. I'll try the best I can to answer it, and I'll put a link to where you can get that manifold. Yeah, we offer that with a factory style connection, or a -6 or a -8 AN if you want to run an AN hose over there. So, but yeah, any questions, shoot me a message and subscribe. I'll be posting videos as I get this thing done and fired up and running. So, thanks for watching.